I always thought my life was simple, nothing more than the quiet rhythm of suburban days, where every morning felt like a soft, familiar melody. My name is Lily, and I live in a small neighborhood where the biggest excitement is the occasional bake sale or the yearly block party. Every house seemed like a page from a storybook, and I liked it that way. Routine was my comfort, and I never wished for anything more complicated. But then, Adrian moved in next door. It started on a late afternoon when the moving trucks pulled up beside my house. I was watering my garden when I noticed a tall man stepping out of a sleek black car, his silhouette sharp against the fading sunlight. He was different from anyone I'd ever seen around here, tall, with dark hair that caught the last rays of sun, and a presence that seemed to ripple through the air like a quiet storm. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers and sideways glances. "Who is he? Where did he come from?" I heard Mrs. Henderson ask as she peered through her lace curtains. Adrian didn't smile or wave like the usual new neighbor trying to make friends. Instead, he moved with a kind of deliberate calm, as if the world around him was slower, or maybe he was just tuned into a different frequency. My heart skipped a tiny beat the first time our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, deep and unreadable, like he was holding a secret too heavy for words. That night, the world around me began to change in subtle, but unsettling ways. I lay in bed, the windows open to catch the cool breeze, when I heard it, the faint flicker of lights in Adrian's house next door. Not just the usual creaks or hums of an old home, but lights that blinked erratically, like Morse code from another world. Then came the howls. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, or maybe the neighborhood dogs, but the sound was too wild, too alive. It wasn't a normal animal's cry, it was something harsher, echoing through the empty streets in waves that made my skin prickle. One evening, while walking my dog near the edge of my yard, I caught a glimpse of shadows moving unnaturally close to Adrian's windows. The shapes twisted and flickered, like smoke trapped in a jar, and then vanished the moment I blinked. A chill ran down my spine, but curiosity kept me rooted there, staring at the dark glass that reflected the moonlight. Despite the warnings whispered by friends, and even the uneasy feeling curling in my chest, I found myself drawn to Adrian. I tried to tell myself to stay away, to keep my distance, but it was like some invisible thread pulled me toward the mystery he carried. One afternoon, as the sky turned a pale gray and the wind teased the autumn leaves, I found myself standing at his doorstep before I even realized I'd walked there. He opened the door before I could knock, as if he'd been waiting. His voice was smooth, almost hypnotic, when he said, "I've been watching you. You're different from the others." His words sent a shiver down my spine, not from fear, but from something else I couldn't name. I wanted to run, to slam the door and forget this strange encounter, but I couldn't. There was something in the way he looked at me, like he saw through the walls I built around myself. That night, I lay awake, wrestling with the strange mix of fear and fascination swirling in my mind. Part of me screamed to pull away, to return to the safety of my quiet life. Yet another part ached to understand him, to peel back the layers of the man who had suddenly shattered the calm I'd always known. Days blurred into nights, and the odd happenings around Adrian's house grew more intense. Lights flickered whenever I passed by, as if his home was alive with a restless energy. Whispers seemed to drift through the air, barely audible, calling my name in a voice both distant and intimate. It felt like I was slipping into a dream where the line between reality and something much darker was fading. I found myself outside his yard again, drawn like a moth to a flame I both feared and desired. Adrian stepped forward with a calm assurance, telling me he meant no harm and wanted to show me a world beyond the ordinary. When I asked why he chose me, his reply was simple but unsettling, "Because you feel the world more deeply than most." His words echoed inside me, stirring a disquiet I couldn't shake. That night, as I stared out my bedroom window toward the flickering lights of his house, I realized my life was no longer the predictable existence I'd cherished. A strange excitement mingled with fear, and I was trapped in the pull of something I didn't yet understand. I had no idea where this path would lead, but I knew one thing: I couldn't turn away from Adrian, no matter how much I tried. The ordinary was slipping through my fingers, and the unknown was calling me closer. The days that followed were like living between two worlds, one foot still planted in the steady ground of my old life, the other stepping cautiously into something darker and more uncertain. I found myself thinking about Adrian constantly, his words echoing in my mind, tugging at parts of me I hadn't known were there. I was scared, of course. Terrified, even. But there was a strange pull, magnetic and relentless, drawing me closer to him and the secrets he hinted at. One evening, unable to resist the growing curiosity, I found myself walking toward his house again. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the air smelled of rain and something else, something electric, like a storm waiting to break. When Adrian opened the door, there was no surprise in his eyes, just that same calm, knowing look that made my heart race. He invited me inside, and as I stepped over the threshold, the world seemed to shift. The air was cooler than outside, and shadows clung to the corners of the room like silent watchers. Walls lined with books that looked centuries old, strange artifacts that whispered of distant places and forgotten times. It was a room that belonged to a man who carried history on his shoulders, and maybe even beyond that. Adrian spoke quietly, carefully revealing fragments of his past. He told stories that sounded like myths of endless nights, of lives lived through centuries, of the loneliness that came with immortality. His voice was steady, but I could see the weight behind his words, the pain masked beneath the calm exterior. I wanted to ask more, to unravel the mystery, but some parts of his story were left unsaid, hanging like shadows just out of reach. As the hours passed, I began to notice things changing inside me. My senses sharpened, sounds were clearer, colors more vivid, even the scent of rain seemed richer. I started having dreams so vivid they felt like memories, dreams where I walked through ancient cities and dark forests, places I'd never been but somehow knew. It was as if a door inside me was opening, revealing a part of myself I hadn't met before. But with those changes came a growing distance from my old life. I found it harder to connect with my friends and family, their conversations feeling dull, their worries small and insignificant compared to the storm building inside me. I caught Tara's worried glances during lunch. "Lily, you're not yourself," she said one afternoon, her voice low with concern. "What's going on?" I wanted to tell her everything, to share the strange world I was slipping into, but I couldn't. How could I explain a darkness that wasn't just outside me but growing inside? I told her I was tired, distracted, and that things had been complicated lately. She didn't look convinced, and after that, I found myself pulling back, afraid that if I got too close, my secret would spill out, unraveling everything. The more time I spent with Adrian, the more tangled my feelings became. He was unlike anyone I'd ever met, both terrifying and captivating. I wanted to trust him, to lean into the mystery he offered, but a part of me screamed to run, to hold on to the safe life I was leaving behind. Nights found me sitting by my window, staring out at his house, wrestling with the storm inside my heart. One night, as a cold wind rattled the trees, Adrian came to me with an urgency I hadn't seen before. He talked about the world hidden beneath our own, the shadows that moved beyond the edge of sight, the dangers lurking in eternal darkness. He told me that the changes I was feeling were only the beginning, that I stood at a crossroads where the choice I made would alter everything. I asked him why me. Why was I caught in this web of darkness and light? His answer was simple, but it shook me, because you see more than others. You feel too deeply. You're ready, even if you don't know it yet. His words echoed in my mind as I lay awake that night. I was caught between two selves, the girl who wanted nothing more than a quiet life, and the woman awakening to something fierce and unknown inside her. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind pulling me forward, but my feet rooted in the ground. Days turned into a blur of whispered conversations and stolen moments with Adrian. He showed me glimpses of his world, places where time moved differently, where shadows held memories and secrets. I felt myself slipping deeper into that darkness, my old life fading like a distant dream. But the more I changed, the more isolated I became. Friends stopped calling, family grew distant, and I found myself alone with the growing storm inside me. The fear of losing everything battled with the hunger to know more, to belong to the strange world Adrian promised. One afternoon, Tara confronted me again, her eyes searching mine. "Lily, please, talk to me. You're disappearing." Her words broke something inside me, a fragile thread connecting me to who I used to be. I wanted to explain, to tell her the truth about Adrian and the shadows following me, but I couldn't. I was trapped between two worlds, unable to fully belong to either. I promised her I was okay, but the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt the changes growing stronger. My heartbeat thrummed with a new rhythm. My senses felt alive, sharp to the edge of pain. I knew I was becoming something else, something neither fully human nor fully stranger. The choice hovering on the horizon loomed larger with every breath. I was terrified of what I was becoming, but I was even more afraid of what I would lose if I turned away. The world I had known was slipping through my fingers, and the darkness beckoned with a promise I couldn't ignore. Caught in the middle of this storm, I realized I had to decide: hold on to the safety of my past or step into the unknown with Adrian, embracing the strange and beautiful darkness that was awakening inside me. But the answer wasn't clear, and the night stretched before me, full of shadows and secrets yet to be revealed. The night Adrian finally revealed the truth was unlike any night I had ever known. It began with the usual tension humming beneath the surface of my days, an electric charge that made every breath feel heavier, every shadow deeper. But when he pulled back the veil on his world, everything I thought I understood shattered like glass. We were sitting in his living room, the air thick with unspoken words, and the scent of rain lingering outside. The flickering candlelight cast long, twisting shadows, making the room feel alive with secrets waiting to be told. Adrian's eyes locked onto mine, not with the same calm detachment I'd seen before, but with something raw and vulnerable, as though he was about to lay his soul bare. "I'm not like you, Lily," he said quietly, voice steady but edged with pain. "I'm a vampire." The word hung between us, heavy and surreal, as if spoken aloud could make the impossible real. I blinked, heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. For a moment, disbelief wrapped around me like a suffocating fog. Vampires were stories, myths whispered around campfires, nightmares born from old legends. And yet, here was Adrian, standing before me, telling me he was one of them. He didn't ask me to believe him. He knew I wouldn't, not right away. Instead, he showed me. With a grace that was both beautiful and unsettling, he moved through the room, his senses heightened, his strength evident in the slightest motion. He spoke of immortality, but not as a gift. It was a curse, eternal nights filled with loneliness, the endless weight of watching the world change while you remain the same. His eyes, dark and endless, reflected centuries of sorrow. It's not the life most imagine. It's a burden, a loneliness that no one can truly understand. His voice cracked just slightly, revealing the depth of his isolation. I wanted to reach out, to touch the man beneath the myth, but fear held me back. This world he was inviting me into was dangerous, terrifying, and utterly unknown. Yet, beneath that fear, a strange sense of awe blossomed. I was standing at the edge of a precipice, caught between the life I had always known and the dark promise of something eternal. Adrian's offer was simple but profound. I could remain human, tied to the fleeting, fragile life I'd always known, or I could join him, stepping into the eternal night. The choice was mine, but the consequences were unimaginable. That night, I walked through his world, the hidden corners of the night where shadows whispered secrets and the air carried the weight of centuries. I felt the cold embrace of the darkness, but also a strange sense of belonging, like coming home to a place I hadn't known I'd missed. The transformation wasn't immediate, but the pull was undeniable. I felt the stirrings of change within me, a hunger, a heightened awareness, a craving for something beyond the ordinary. It was both terrifying and exhilarating, like standing on the edge of a vast ocean, unsure whether to dive in or step back. Adrian stayed by my side, patient and steady, guiding me through the first steps of this new existence. He showed me the power and the peril of his kind, the strength to move unseen, the ability to feel the pulse of life in a way no human could. But he also revealed the darkness that came with that power, the eternal hunger, the loneliness that gnawed at the soul. As the night deepened, I realized that becoming like him meant more than just gaining strength or immortality. It meant carrying a weight I wasn't sure I could bear. It meant stepping into a world where love and loss were intertwined in ways I had never imagined. When dawn threatened the horizon, I found myself standing at the crossroads of my old life and the new one unfolding before me. The choice was no longer theoretical, it was real, pressing, urgent. I looked at Adrian, seeing not just the immortal being he was, but the man who had offered me a chance to rewrite my story. His eyes held a plea, not for me to join him blindly, but to understand the truth of what that choice meant. I didn't have the answers. I didn't know if I was ready to leave behind the warmth of the sun and the comfort of my old life. But in that moment, I understood that some doors, once opened, could not be closed. The night stretched on, filled with whispered promises and silent fears. I felt the fragile thread between who I was and who I might become growing taut, ready to snap or to hold strong. And as the first light of dawn touched the sky, I knew that my life, forever changed by Adrian's truth, was poised on the edge of a new beginning I couldn't yet fully grasp. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope stretched thin between two worlds, one familiar, the other shadowed and dangerous. My friends and family started noticing the cracks I tried to hide, the way I drifted further from the girl they once knew. Tara's worried glances turned into whispered conversations behind my back, and my mother's concerned calls came more often, each one a reminder of the distance growing between us. I tried to explain, to ground myself in the reality I still clung to, but the truth was slipping through my fingers like smoke. Adrian's secret world was pulling me deeper, and with every step, I felt myself unraveling from the safe life I'd always known. Rumors began to swirl around the neighborhood, strange noises at night, shadows lurking where they shouldn't be. The once quiet streets grew tense, filled with whispers of something unseen, but deeply feared. I knew the truth behind those rumors, and I feared what might happen if anyone uncovered it. One afternoon, as I walked through the park with Tara, she stopped me abruptly, eyes searching mine. "Lily, whatever's happening to you, it's not just you anymore. People are talking. They're scared." Her voice trembled with both worry and frustration. I wanted to reassure her, to tell her everything, but the weight of Adrian's world pressed down on me. I only shook my head, telling her I needed time, space. It felt like a betrayal, not just to her, but to myself. Then, the danger arrived. A figure appeared on the edges of our fragile world, a rival vampire, older and colder than Adrian, with eyes that held centuries of cruelty. His presence was like a shadow stretching across the neighborhood, darkening the days and haunting the nights. He challenged Adrian's claim, his intentions clear and threatening. I saw it in Adrian's eyes, the steel beneath his calm, the fierce protectiveness that flared when the rival drew near. The tension between them crackled like a storm ready to break. One night, the confrontation came. The rival stepped out of the shadows, his voice low and menacing as he addressed me directly. "You don't belong here, human. Stay away or you'll regret it." Fear surged through me, sharp and sudden, but beneath it rose something new, a stubborn resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I refused to be a pawn in their ancient battles, a victim caught between forces beyond my understanding. When the rival lunged, Adrian was there in an instant, strong, swift, and fierce. The fight was brutal, shadows and silence clashing in the night as Adrian defended me with a ferocity that both terrified and reassured me. I realized then that our connection was deeper than I'd imagined, forged not just by curiosity, but by a bond that demanded protection. Afterward, as the danger faded into the quiet night, Adrian looked at me with a mix of gratitude and something softer, a respect born from seeing my strength in the face of fear. The neighborhood felt different after that night. The rumors didn't stop, but I stood taller, no longer hiding behind the fragile mask of normalcy. I was changing, growing into a new version of myself shaped by the shadows and the light intertwined in my life. But the path ahead was still uncertain, and the dangers lurking just beyond the edge of my world reminded me that the choice I had made came with consequences far beyond what I'd ever imagined. The night I faced the rival vampire again, something inside me shifted, like the last fragile thread holding me to my old self snapped, and a new strength surged to the surface. I stood my ground, heart pounding but steady, eyes locked on the darkness that threatened to swallow everything I had begun to build. Fear was still there, but beneath it was a fierce determination I hadn't known I possessed. "You don't get to decide who I am," I said, voice clear and unwavering. "I won't be your victim." The words surprised even me, carrying a weight beyond my understanding. In that moment, I knew this was more than a fight for survival. It was a declaration of who I was becoming. Adrian stepped beside me, his presence a steady anchor in the swirling chaos. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an ancient amulet, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. "This," he said, "is yours now. It's a symbol of the choice before you, the freedom to stand with me, or to walk away." I looked at the amulet, feeling its strange warmth seep into my skin. It wasn't just a trinket, it was a promise, a bond, a key to a future I had only just begun to imagine. Taking it felt like accepting the unknown, embracing both the light and shadow within me. It was a choice to own my story, to no longer be defined by fear or doubt. In the days that followed, I felt the pieces of my life shift and settle into a new pattern. I was no longer just Lily, the girl who lived in a quiet neighborhood, but someone transformed by love and courage, ready to face whatever came next. Adrian and I stood together, not just as protector and protected, but as partners navigating a world that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. Our connection was a balance of strength and vulnerability, of choice and trust. I understood now that love was not about losing myself, but about finding the courage to be whole, even in the face of darkness. The future was uncertain, shadows stretching long and unknown, but we faced it side by side, ready to write our own story, one not bound by fear, but by the fierce light of our own making. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.